All right, here we go. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Well, if you're Dakota's mom, or my mom, you know exactly where your children are. At least a couple of them. They're talking about movies. Welcome to the new episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies.
About time.
I'm Steven.
And I'm Dakota.
And tonight we're doing another review of the new Steven Spielberg movie, Bridge of Spies.
I didn't know that was out now.
Yeah.
So many people are saying to themselves.
Yeah. Bridge of what? Steven who? Yes, we're talking about that. Yes, there is a new Steven Spielberg. Did you hear of it? Maybe. Not many people did. This one seemed to kind of sneak under the radar. And I think maybe Spielberg did that on purpose a little bit. I don't know. It seemed like this wasn't meant to be one of his big blockbusters.
It should have been, though. This movie should have taken in $100 million first weekend, yes.
Oh, Dakota's showing his cards.
That's right.
But yeah, so we'll be going into our review of Bridge of Spies starring Tom Hanks here in a few more minutes. But first, as usual, we want to talk about a little bit of movie news. So what's in the news sphere that you've been that's been catching your eye, Dakota?
Oh, well, unfortunately...
Well, this sounds promising already.
We might as well start off on a low point, build it up. The amazing actor known as Fred Thompson unfortunately passed away a few days ago.
Yes. Kind of became a politician and senator and tried to run for president at one point a few years back. But yeah, is more known as being in movies like Hunt for Red October, and then of course he was on Law and Order.
Yeah, that's where I met him and fell in love with him.
But yeah, he's also known for just what's interesting is he was a senator in real life, but in movies he was always the guy who you could get to play some sort of government guy or senator, just because he had that kind of look and hold to him, which is why he worked in Law and Order too, as that character too. Just he had that kind of presence to him. But yes, he was only, and I say only, he's in his 70s, but he's only 73. You know, that's not very old to be dying. But yeah, he did kick it. Good, big, tall Southern boy. So
I'm trying to think here. Yeah, it was him. I think the last thing I saw him in, and this was a while ago, was Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. He played he was President Grant in that movie, and he had a small part.
I never saw that. He played Grant, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Big fluffy beard to him.
I was gonna say it's hard to picture Fred Thompson with a big beard.
Yeah, unfortunately, he was only in the. Oddly enough, according to this movie, Grant was actually concerned with Indian rights, which is odd because I heard his administration was just corrupt as well, probably one of the more corrupt we've ever had.
Well, I think that was kind of, yeah. Grant wasn't.
You see, his character. It was actually interesting because they made him obviously Civil War hero. He was supposed to have been a hard drinking, tough fighting.
Supposedly he was a speeder too. What they considered a speeder at the time. He was speeding in a horse and carriage around Washington D.C.
But they actually made him seem pretty sympathetic, and I just thought that was interesting. You know, as we're going to probably talk about this later, there's certain aspects of history that we just forget about over time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that was one of those rare moments where we got to take a look at another side.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Even if it's something that you're not super interested in or something, it is interesting how when they make these movies, and if they're made well, like I know Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee was really well received, and they can just kind of open the door on this little section of history that isn't always talked about. It is cool to at least know about those things, even if you're not a history person. It's just good to know about the different things that happened and how it was handled, and just to know what that meant in the large scheme of just politics, relations, anything like that. So yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize he was in that. But like I said, I never saw that one. But yeah, anyway, that was Fred Thompson had passed away. Something that kind of caught my eye, and I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. I'm gonna go kind of more like with how I feel about it.
So this is the absurd part of the movie news.
Yeah, was that they want to reboot Ocean's 11, which at first you just go, wow, it's really soon to reboot Ocean's 11 again, because the Ocean's 11 they made in like 99 or 2000 was a remake of an old Rat Pack movie. But this time around, just to jazz it up again, they want it to be an all-female Ocean's 11, and they're eyeing Sandra Bullock to lead. So I'm assuming she would be Annie Ocean? They'll just take the D off and make her Annie, I guess. I don't know what they'll call her. Andrea Ocean.
She could still be Danny.
That's true. There's Danielle. But yeah, so kind of like what they're doing with Ghostbusters. What was the other thing they've...
Technically Roadhouse.
Oh, yeah, there's going to be a Roadhouse with Ronda Rousey playing the Patrick Swayze role. And they're acting like... Hollywood's just kind of acting like doing all this is like, see, look at this, we're fixing that. But it's like, no, I think... women are fighting for more leading roles, but I don't think it's because they want you to take something that was already done and just kind of rehash it with girls or women. But it's like, I think what would help their cause more is if it was more interesting original roles that were written for women. This is just like, all right, here you go, here's your woman movie. And it's like, nobody will want to see it since it's a stupid reboot.
Yeah, this could blow up in their faces so bad.
And obviously I'm guessing Warner Brothers will be doing this since they did the other ones, and I don't know. It's... just don't know.
It's like, what's next? The all-female reboot of The Expendables?
Yeah.
It's just...
Ronda Rousey's eyeing playing the Terminator. Like, reboot the Terminator again, but with a female Terminator, which they've kind of done, but not really. Reboot
Jaws, except this time it's a woman sheriff.
It's a female shark.
There you go.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like the Mummy with a female mummy. It's like reboot all these ridiculous things or something. The Wolf Woman. So
Dracula and Frankenstein, but which both of those have kind of already been done in their own right. But
yes, but yeah. So there's that. Anything else, Dakota, that kind of caught you this week?
Not really. Not in the movie news.
I know something that kind of happened over this Halloween weekend was the worst box office weekend of the year of 2015. Yes. That usually doesn't happen at Halloween time.
Instead of having some really small bombs, we just got a bunch of big ones. And
yeah. Well, they had some obscure movie many people didn't seem to have heard about that they tried to act like was all of a sudden this big movie. Our Brand is Crisis. It also just kind of showed up and they were acting like, here's a movie you've been waiting for, but nobody knew what it was, nobody cared.
Yeah, it had an interesting trailer, but it was it kind of reminded me of those political satires they made a lot of in the 90s.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm trying to think, Wag the Dog.
Like Wag the Dog, sure.
What was the one that was supposed to be about Bill Clinton, but not about Bill Clinton?
Primary Colors.
Yeah, it was one of those.
This isn't about Bill Clinton. He just acts exactly like Bill Clinton, and she acts exactly like Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Yeah. It was one of those things, and then the other one from a big star we had was Burnt, which instead of...
Yeah, which had the two leading people from American Sniper,
yeah.
But in a totally different movie, where Bradley Cooper plays,
he's supposed to be like a slightly psychotic chef.
Trying to make a restaurant 4 stars or something again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was just kind of movies like that, and so it caused The Martian to be #1 movie of the weekend, even though it's been out for almost a month now.
Yeah.
And, so just kind of interesting things like that. But I have a feeling that November's going to be a big spike in box office again with Bond, possibly Peanuts.
Yep, the Peanuts gang are back, guys. Yeah.
And the early reviews of that have been pretty good. That that it works. And, of course, you got Mockingjay Part 2, which, has a huge hype and following to it. And now at this point, 3 movies in, probably have had more people watch them, read the books, to even, a lot of times when you get to that last movie, it's even bigger because more people have jumped on the bandwagon, like what happened with the
Harry Potter
Yeah,
movies.
what was the last one called? Deathly Hallows.
Yeah.
The Deathly Hallows Part 2, it just got even bigger. And so I'm guessing, they'll be that way with this one too. So November will probably change some of that. But I think now we'll just move into our review of Bridge of Spies.
You've been selected for a mission which you are not to discuss with anyone outside of this room. We are engaged in a war with the Soviet Union. This war does not for the moment involve men at arms. It involves information.
Something important has come up.
We've got a Soviet spy. But there's a wrinkle.
They got our spy pilot. With a head full of classified information. The Russians want their man back before he cracks.
We want you to negotiate the swap.
I'm an insurance lawyer. I'm not sure I want to pick that up.
Are you good at what you do?
This will be a first for the both of us.
You should be careful.
I'm talking to you about the security of your country.
Why aren't we hanging him? He's a spy!
You're asking me to violate the Constitution.
Do you know how people will look at us? The family of a man trying to free a traitor?
Everyone deserves a defense. Every person matters. Where do they want this negotiation?
East Berlin.
Just tell me that you're not going to be in any danger. I don't even care if it's the truth. Give me something to hold on to.
We need to have the conversation our governments can't.
People in my country consider this an act of war.
You can call it what you want. Let's be clear. Nobody is safe.
We're in a battle for civilization.
The Constitution is what makes us Americans. Shouldn't we show our enemies who we are?
Things are starting to fall apart. Is this your position or your government's?
Is there any outcome here where I'm not either detained or shot?
Do we need to worry about you?
What's the move when we don't know what the game is?
The next mistake our countries make could be the last one.
And here we go.
So, like we said, Bridge of Spies was a, would you call it, I guess it'd be a spy thriller, but it was almost more drama in a lot of ways. I would almost call it, do you think it's fair to call it a spy drama, almost more than a thriller?
I was thinking it was more of a political thriller, kind of.
Yeah, it just kind of had that whole blend in it. And like we said, it was starring Tom Hanks and was directed by Steven Spielberg, and was actually, 2 of the writing credits were the Coen brothers.
Yeah, that I had no idea.
Yeah, I just had found that out just, I think, I don't know, a week or 2 ago, that they had written it, and it kind of reminded me how they had written Unbroken, too, the Louis Zamperini movie that was not directed by them also, that was directed by Angelina Jolie. And so, I don't know, apparently they've been diving into the history books.
I don't know, maybe they decided to take some time off directing their own movies?
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently, in their free time, they write things. So, yeah. And so, this is basically, this movie was based on a 1960 incident during the Cold War when a Well, it was kind of a couple of different things went on. The U.S. took into custody a Russian spy, or a Soviet spy in America, and during the same time that he was detained, a U-2 pilot, I'm not talking about Bono flying a plane, there was the spy planes that flew 70,000 feet over Soviet Russia they were trying to use to kind of keep an eye on Russia. One of them crashed in Soviet Russia, and the pilot was recovered and detained, and it kind of turned into this whole, basically, incident here where they were trying to work out if an exchange would be possible and all this stuff. And so all this is kind of the culminating parts of the beginning of the movie, and kind of building how Tom Hanks gets involved in all this too, because he's a insurance lawyer. So I don't know if you want to try to explain some of that, Dakota, kind of the setup of that, what brings him into it.
Well, he, at one point, they imply that at one point in time in this movie, in the history, which I'm guessing is what actually happened, he was a criminal attorney, and they say that he was actually at Nuremberg prosecuting Nazi war criminals, which I immediately thought, cool, does that mean we get a prequel?
Yeah, a James Donovan prequel.
Yeah. But
we'll meet a young Tom Hanks. How about his son Colin?
There you go. But what happens in the movie, and apparently what happened in history, is the Bar Association, and I'm assuming it's New York, decided that this guy should get a fair trial. You know, so it couldn't be questioned, oh, he didn't receive fair treatment, which they didn't say it in the movie, but I'm guessing that stemmed from what happened with the Rosenbergs, who supposedly their other Soviet spies that were caught in the U.S., they were executed. But the idea is to give this guy a fair, in quotes, trial, when the idea is he's pretty much going to be found guilty.
Yeah, they kind of had this idea of like, well, we want to make sure the Soviets in the world sees that we are a fair system, so we'll put him through trial, and then we'll electrocute him.
Yeah.
And it was kind of one of those deals, which is strange, but when you put yourself into the mentality of that time period, is like, well, I could see where it would be like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
kind of what happens when you're in those types of situations.
Even the judge at the trial pretty much says that. It's like, well, just go sit next to the spy.
He's like, we're not drawing this out because we all know he's getting fried, is basically what he says. And it's interesting, it kept reminding me of, I really felt like James Donovan, Tom Hanks' character, was almost like John Adams. A lot of people don't realize that John Adams defended the British soldiers involved in the Boston Massacre.
Yeah.
And everybody was just ticked that John Adams would defend those men, because, you know, it was, again, at the time, we didn't like the British. You know, a lot of people, especially in Boston, did not like the British. And so everybody hated John Adams for a time, which, of course, he didn't really care because he was John Adams. But his thinking was, everybody deserves a fair trial. And that seemed to be James Donovan's mindset, too, that, okay, this guy, even if we have all this evidence he's a Russian spy, our Constitution says everyone deserves a fair trial. And it was really ironic how I'd be interested to see if you could be in like some of the conversations of this actual incident where some of the guys in the government were like, stop quoting the Constitution at me. It was like, here he was using the thing that they swear to uphold, and they're mad at him for using it, you know, in that way, just because they want to get this done and they want justice in their way. And so it's kind of this fine line of justice and revenge. Well, kind of revenge, but more like using this guy as a statement, maybe even more so too. And so it was kind of riding that line there. And so it actually becomes a strange story of friendship, really. Yeah. How James Donovan and I can't remember his first name, Abel, the Soviet spy, almost get a friendship through this time together and kind of gain a mutual respect for each other. Abel sees Donovan as a honorable man who wants to do right by what he's said he would do, and Donovan sees Abel as a man who's really just doing what an American would be doing if he were caught in Russia. In fact, he says so much in the movie. He goes, well, isn't this, if one of our guys were in Russia, wouldn't we, be proud of him if he acted like this? He almost gained like a respect for him in that sense, in how he kept his honor, and it was just kind of an interesting friendship, in a way, formed out of that.
Yeah, and the interesting part is that he didn't even want to take the case originally in this movie.
Well, for a lot of reasons. He wasn't a criminal attorney anymore. He knew he'd be hated.
Yeah, but I just think that's interesting how, kind of right off the bat, he doesn't want to do it, but he knows that with him, he's going to get a fair try, or he's going to get somebody that's actually going to try to give him a fair trial.
Yeah.
As opposed to, just like, oh, well, so this is the evidence, and I don't know, we'll just plead guilty and you'll go to prison. And
mm-hmm.
But one thing that I found I really liked about the story of how they became friends is just the fact that the Abel character just handles everything so well. I mean, he's a stranger in a strange land.
He really is, yeah.
He doesn't know what's about to happen to him, and he's just completely calm.
Yeah, and it's funny because Tom Hanks would look at him, and when he'd bring up certain things like possibility of electrocution, and he'd be like, doesn't that bother you? Or he goes, shouldn't you be a little more nervous about this? And he goes, would that help? Like every time Tom Hanks would ask him something about, well, aren't you nervous, or shouldn't you be, shaking in your boots kind of thing, and he'd go, would that help? I mean, he was just was so calm about it all. And you could call that maybe zealot dedication.
Yeah.
Maybe some of it was the fact that he was a past middle-aged man and was at a point where he understood that death was a possibility for in a lot of reasons, and he was okay with what the fate that could come, or he was just an ultimate spy where he could just cover up his real feelings to that level too. So
yeah, he does say that he has been out of Russia for years at a time.
Yeah,
so
because he was his passport and citizenship was actually in the UK.
Yeah,
is where it said he was from, and so he was a foreigner, but it didn't necessarily say he was Soviet, and so the Soviets were trying to not claim him really as a spy.
When the whole time they just want him back or dead.
Yeah, whichever way keeps him from saying anything. Telling information.
They don't really say it in the movie, but I guess what he was doing was he was getting information from someone else, like really valuable information.
Yeah.
Turning it into code and then sending it on.
Which is implied, but not really.
Yeah, they don't really go into it. And one thing, I had to look this up. I was wondering how they even found out he was a spy. Apparently, the CIA caught another Russian spy, and this guy apparently did not have nerves of steel and just spilled his guts.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that he got put in that position because another Soviet spy wasn't made of the same stuff he was.
Yeah. And yeah, that's what got him outed, to get the government to start paying attention to him and watching his every move, basically. And but like we said, it ends up getting to be more complicated of a situation because James Donovan, Tom Hanks' character, after defending Abel, ends up being the go-to for handling the prisoner exchange negotiations because of the fact that he would be a private citizen to keep it from becoming an event. And so it becomes quite a bit more of a large scale thing, and you get to see just the way that this man decided to handle the situation, which was very, very interesting and very gutsy at times, and it just ended up being a really interesting spy movie of an event that I had minuscule knowledge about, really. But it just kind of opened up kind of a window to this incident, and also just the time when West Berlin and East Berlin became West Berlin and East Berlin, when the wall was put up, and just kind of seeing that unfold a little bit. Spielberg is so good at capturing moments in history like that. Like in Schindler's List, he captured, well, obviously in that movie it was heavily captured, I guess you could say, the Holocaust, and just shedding light on just the horror of what that was. And then, of course, in Saving Private Ryan, just capturing D-Day and how what American GIs went through on that day and things like that. And I feel like this is another place where, well, and then you could say even with Munich, the way he that was another incident that some people knew about, but not many.
Or I was going to say Lincoln, point out Lincoln.
And then, of course, there was Lincoln, where he decided to focus on a very specific event, where instead of focusing on the big Civil War going on, he decided, let's just focus on the war Lincoln fought in the Senate and the House to get slavery abolished. And it gives you a little... You knew that happened, but it gets you more into the mind of the political savviness of Lincoln. Yeah, so he's just really good at kind of capturing these moments, and I felt like this one was right in there, too.
Oh, yeah. This
And I don't know about you, Dakota, but, obviously Steven Spielberg is pretty good at filming tight movies. There's a few times when you can see maybe it's not so tight. Yeah. Like Lost World, Jurassic Park was kind of not a terribly tight movie. But a lot of his movies are really tight when telling a story in the way he decides to show it. But you almost got to wonder if the Coen Brothers script helped, just because those guys are known to be, some of the best storyteller writers in the biz. So.
Well, yeah, they're good at not necessarily telling like big stories, but stories that involve people, and I think that's what really helped here, because
definitely
it's pointed out in the movie when Donovan, he makes it to East Berlin after after a kind of tense scene traveling from West Berlin to East Berlin, and he's talking with this guy, and they pretty much just agree that, hey, we're just people sitting here talking, but we can have the conversations that our country cannot. And it's one of those interesting things, and it just kind of... I have a feeling the Coen brothers put that line in there. Just because that seems like something they would do. And it's kind of fascinating how this story kind of just flows. And then one thing that came out of left field, something I had no idea about, was there was actually a third prisoner that ended up getting involved in all this.
Yes. Yeah.
An American college student was in Berlin
studying economics.
Yeah,
in
Soviet
economics during the Cold War. Yep.
But he ends up getting arrested. He gets accused of being a spy. Yeah, it's a pretty exaggerated claim. But he gets drawn into this whole mess, and
really doesn't have to be, though. But Donovan, that was one thing he worked at when he heard about that guy.
That scene where he brings up the fact that he wants these 2 American prisoners for this one Russian prisoner kind of blew me away, because I was like, oh, whoa, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting just to see they bring James Donovan. I don't know. I would like to know more about him because this movie just makes it out that he was like, just so tenacious and just he saw what needed to be done and he just seemed to do it. You know, that's how it came across in this movie, and I'd really be interested to read more into that, which is what a good historical movie should do, because obviously this was a movie. You don't want to get all of your facts about this was inspired by real events, but wasn't necessarily, we don't know all the conversations. They have to make it fit into a 2 to 2.5 hour time frame. But so I would definitely be interested to see, to find out more about this James Donovan. Although just doing the old skim surface stuff, it seems like this movie got a lot of the events across pretty truthfully. It's just a matter of, you're always going to have your bias in how you decide who you're going to make more heroic and who you're going to villainize a little bit more and things like that. Just because you could argue that Abel, a Soviet spy in America, was painted in a pretty nice picture in this movie, in one sense. You knew who he was. You knew he was kind of a devious spy, but at the same time, because of his kindredship with Donovan, you didn't think of him as a total villain or, guy you didn't like or something, So, but yeah, so as far as just filming in general outside of the actual storyline of the movie, how did you feel about that? Like the way it was shot and...
I thought it was overall pretty good. I gotta say, this was actually a really interesting movie in that it reminded me of a lot of older movies. It was kind of interesting that it had that feel to it. I'm pretty sure it was on purpose, but
probably a little bit, especially when I looked at the history of getting this movie made. It was originally kind of conceived in 1965. To make this movie, and Gregory Peck was going to play the Tom Hanks role, and Alec Guinness was going to play Abel, and so you almost got to wonder if Spielberg kind of looked at that history and just decided, well, let's make this kind of more of an old school thriller in that sense.
It definitely worked for... some movies try to have it be intense, and sometimes it just doesn't work.
I felt Argo, Ben Affleck's, it felt like he overdid the tension and thriller suspense kind of at the end. Yeah. I felt like he kind of just overdid it to kind of this big dramatic pull, and sometimes that's okay, but sometimes it makes you feel like maybe they don't have confidence in the story they're telling, and so they gotta, jazz it up or something, whereas...
this movie definitely didn't have that problem.
Yeah, just kind of, you were interested in the whole thing, and Spielberg always has that unique way of how he decides to kind of start a shot, film the shot, and then kind of how he decides to have you look at the shot, and just what things he decides to do and have you focus on, or, the one scene I noticed when they're walking in a subway station. It's near the beginning. It seemed like there was a sign where it said walk, don't run. It had these signs above to keep people kind of orderly in the subway area. And I noticed that it was handheld. He filmed that handheld where these government guys are kind of following Abel. And it's it almost feels like he did the handheld there just so that it was even though they're kind of walking and trying to be kind of coy through this place, the shakiness kind of gave it a little bit more of you're working your way through the crowd with them, and he likes to capture those moments where you're kind of in with them and with the events going on, and I don't know, I've always appreciated that about how he films movies, where you're not so much
every draws you into it.
Well, every shot isn't just a big panorama shot of everything going on, but you're kind of in the moments, You're kind of in their head when you need to be, or in the actions when you need to be. Kind of like Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson did way too many big shots because he wanted to capture the big things, where he did a lot, and maybe you could say it worked there, because I guess it did kind of work there to capture the big moments, but this is a movie that definitely needed to have those tight moments, but still not be jarring or out of place or something. I just thought he did a really good job, because this is a pretty low-key movie. This wasn't Jurassic Park, this wasn't Minority Report, this wasn't even Saving Private Ryan. This is a pretty low-key movie. I thought it just came across really well, and this was only like the second time in his feature film career that John Williams didn't score it. Thomas Newman actually did the music for this movie because John Williams wasn't feeling well during the time when it needed to be done, and I had mentioned to Dakota earlier, I thought maybe that benefited this movie a little bit, since it wasn't the usual Spielberg spectacle, that it didn't have like a certain familiarity in score, because sometimes you can tell John Williams.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but a lot of times you can tell John Williams, and so you kind of had that element take it out, where there wasn't that familiarity even in the music that progressed you through the movie too, and so I thought maybe that.
Yeah, they definitely needed a more subdued tone for this movie, which they kind of did that with the colors too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I mean, when you're in bleak Soviet Berlin and places like that, yeah, it's going to happen. But I thought the casting in this movie is really well. The guy who played Abel, guy I'd never really heard of before, that Spielberg saw in a play and thought he's really well and cast him. I thought he did a really good job playing Abel. Mark Rylance, I'm not sure if that's how you say his last name, or Rylance, I don't know. Anyway, Spielberg's using him again. Next summer he's going to be the BFG in Spielberg's movie, The BFG, based on the Roald Dahl book, which stands for, is it Big Friendly Giant? Is that what that stands for?
Yes. I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah.
There's been rumors about what that stands for.
Well, yeah, I guess, like, in Doom it stands for something different. But, yeah, so anyway, apparently Spielberg liked working with him, and he was good. In fact, I mentioned to Dakota after we saw it that it was really subdued, and I could see where it might not happen, but at the same time, it wouldn't shock me if there's a possibility of a supporting actor nod for his performance, just because it was an interesting enough role, and he pulled it off pretty well. And sometimes it helps when you don't have a past in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
To get those types of nominations, and he wouldn't have a past where it's like, that would be going against him or something like that. So we'll see. I think, there's a possibility maybe some other things with this movie. I could see where maybe some of that things like cinematography or something could definitely could get nominated for that too, just because of, you're talking about the look of it was really good. I mean, there was no jarring moments just because the CGI was very... I mean, there's a few shots that obviously must have been CGI just based on what happened in the shots.
Yeah.
But I don't really recall noticing it.
Yeah, there were no weak moments with the CGI like there sometimes is.
Yeah, but but in terms of just visually, I was never jarred out of thinking I was in the late 1950s, early 60s. Everything looked right to me. Although I will admit I'm not those people who are like, well, that cigarette pack wouldn't have been around until 1964, and it's 1950, whatever, in this movie. And so, I guess I know someone knows all that detail, but I thought, just overall, I wasn't jarred out of, time period type things. And, there were some people who were, known stars in this movie that didn't have huge parts in this movie, but they were parts that just didn't call for very large parts. They just weren't a big part of the overall story, but everybody I thought, did a really good job in this movie as far as that goes. And so just overall impression, Dakota, what do you say about Bridge of Spies?
This was definitely one of the better movies I've seen this year. Although, to be fair, that's not saying much. But this was a really good movie.
Yeah. Well, I'd say as far as this year, yes, it was a very good movie. But just as far as like whatever category you want to put this in, whether it's kind of a true event type thing, spy movie, biopic, biopic is something where it can be really generalized or can be very specific how you use that term. But this is definitely, a true event movie. And I think in terms of a true event movie, historical drama type thing, one of the better ones, especially the better ones I've seen in a while. And it was nice to just be able to review a movie on here that wasn't an action blockbuster. I was realizing we haven't done too many outside of the big blockbuster movies as far as reviews on this show.
Yeah, we have this one and The Martian,
but The Martian was a blockbuster.
Well, it made a lot of money.
It's true. I guess maybe there is a little bit of a difference there between busting the block and making a lot of money. So yeah, as far as me, I'd say definitely see this when you have the chance. It's over 2 hours, but I was shocked to see that. I guess
yeah, you do not feel those 2 hours.
You don't feel it, and that's impressive because sometimes these historical event movies you can feel the time. Even a better one, you can feel the length.
Yeah,
and you didn't really feel the length in this, and I think just because it had a progressing enough story to it, and the events going on you were interested in the whole time, and having someone like Tom Hanks in the lead always helps, just because he always plays an interesting lead, and he draws you into a movie just because even if you don't really care for him, he's still always really relatable and likable in the movie season. Even movies like I don't like Da Vinci Code. I mean, he's not even very good in that movie, but
yeah.
But he's still Tom Hanks, and there's always just something about him that kind of draws you in. I don't know, he just kind of has that ability to do that. But at the same time, I didn't really think about the fact that I was watching Tom Hanks this whole movie too. I was, he kind of pulls you into the story. So yeah, so definitely check this one out.
Take a friend.
Learn some history movie version of it, and maybe it'll intrigue you enough to search out more about this stuff and learn why the band U2 decided to call themselves U2. And yeah, so it's definitely a recommend from Dakota, recommend from me. Obviously if you get a chance to see it in theaters, more power to you. Even though it's kind of low-key, it was still fun to see it on the big screen. And so, yeah. As far as... lost my train of thought there.
Dun, dun, dun.
Wow, I'm just blanking out here. Facebook, keep up with us on Facebook, like us on there. It's where we post movie news things we come across, obviously when the new episodes are coming out, but also if you just subscribe to us on YouTube or iTunes, one of those things, you'll automatically get an email saying new episode is up. And so if you do that, you'll know right away once it's uploaded. And so I encourage you to do that, and of course, rate and review, because we want to know how good or terrible we're doing, so let us know. Plus it, obviously rating and reviewing kind of boosts you a little bit. It'd take quite a bit to boost us at this point,
yes.
But any of it helps, and so it's just nice to hear from what people think.
Yeah, help us help you.
Help us help you. There you go.
That's all we ask.
And if you rate a review, you'll get put into a... No, I don't know. We don't have anything to give away right now.
You should have went with it, then we could have been like, gotcha!
Oh, yeah, I got nothing.
You win a brand new Toyota.
You win a free...
And then the joke would be on you. We'd give you a little Toyota.
I'll tell you what. If you rate and review us on iTunes or something, one of those... iTunes would be the place to be. So, if you rate and review us on iTunes, we'll call you out on the next episode after we see that and give you a shout out. And there you go. We'll do that right now. That's what we can afford, I think.
There you go.
We can afford a shout out. So, there you go. So remember to do that, and I think with that, we'll close up the show here. So I'm Steven.
And I am Dakota.
Thanks for listening.